Hello, everyone, and welcome to Common Time Podcast, where we bring you world-class professional development for music educators straight to your phone. I'm David Clemmer.
And I'm John Pasquale.
And we are your hosts and fellow music educators. In each episode, we will interview a guest who is an expert in their field, here to provide us insight, strategies, and inspiration to help you elevate your ensemble. Our guest today is Mr. Patrick Erwin from the great state of Georgia. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here.
So I'm looking at your bio here, Patrick. You are an educator and champion of student leadership as a high school band director for 17 years at one of the largest band programs in the Southeast. You regularly taught students far more than music. You brought life lessons to the classroom through engaging presentations, fruitful conversations, and relational connection. As an educator, you were named the Smetra Hero in the Classroom, received the George N. Parks Leadership in Music Education Award from NAFME and Music for All, and recently was named a top 25 teacher in Cobb County, Georgia by Cobb Life Magazine and Marietta Daily Journal. You now serve as the Director of Curriculum for Growing Leaders, where you utilize expertise to develop fresh new ways for teachers to reach students with life skills, social and emotional learning concepts, and learning through the power of transformational images, stories, and experiences. We won't hold this against you, but you hold a degree from the University of Georgia and Auburn University, and a Tier 1 Leadership Certificate from Berry College. Today, we're talking band culture and student leadership. So let's just jump right in. John, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, Patrick, it's so great to have you here. Welcome. Hey, so what is the funniest or most memorable moment that you've had on the podium or teaching students?
John, I taught for 17 years. And so how long do you want this podcast to be, really? I went through a list of things, man. There was one funny memory. So I had the pleasure of opening a brand new school, Cobb County, Georgia, with an educator by the name of Chris Farrell. He came from Texas, great country of Texas. Yeah. And when early on, we were trying to do some things, and we went to Orlando to a Bands of America regional. We had never traveled. It was this third year of the school. And it was his birthday while we were there. And Chris was, he was equal parts like really scary and loving to the kids. And we had this group of student leaders that wanted to honor his birthday. And so after hours, I gave them permission to sneak out of their rooms and decorate his hotel room door for his birthday, thinking he would be asleep. Well, we were all wrong. And he throws the door open. He's like, "What are you guys doing out of your room?" And these are the best of the best, all-state musician, amazing drum major kids. And they screamed and ran back to their room and cried all night. And they came to me the next morning and they were like, "Mr. Erwin, we're going to get kicked out of band. Mr. Farrell's going to send us home." And Chris comes to breakfast and he's like, "I am so sorry. I understand what you were doing. And I completely overreacted." And I was like, "It was my plan, bro. I'm so sorry that happened." So that was my funny memory.
That is awesome. We will have to have Chris on. And
you should. He's fantastic.
Bring this story up for sure.
Master educator.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Master
So let's just dive in a little bit deeper. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, your career, and how you arrived at your current role in leadership?
Yeah, I think like many band directors and former band directors, I had an educator or several educators in my life that just made me love music. And I was going to be a lawyer, man. I was all the way through high school. I'm going to law school. I'm going to argue. We're going to change the world. Here we go. And then right at the tail end of my senior year of high school, I changed my mind. I said, "You know what? I'm going to be a band director. I really love music." So I went to the University of Georgia and auditioned, and they looked at me and said, "You really don't play well enough to go here, but you're smart and we're going to give you a chance." So small fish in a big pond. Made it work for a while. I was marching drum corps. You guys know that because you both taught me at the Cavaliers. And was marching drum corps and came back one semester and just decided I don't want to do this anymore. I was burned out. And so I changed my major and got a degree in political science. And I was headed to law school. And then a mutual friend of all of ours, David Bertman, grabbed me one summer, 2002. We were teaching Cavaliers. And he grabs me. He goes, "Why are you going to law school?" You can hear the voice. And I was like, "David, I just really want to be a lawyer." "Why? Why? Tell me why." I was like, I don't have an answer. He goes, "You're a teacher. You need to teach." And then he walks away. This was like warm up for a show, right? And about 2 weeks later, I looked at him and said, "David, you're right. I don't know why I'm going to be a lawyer." So I called University of Georgia. I said, "I've made a terrible error and I want to be a music major again." And they said, you've got one class left, finish the degree. So I finished the degree, went to grad school at Georgia, which was great. I didn't want to leave Athens anyways, greatest town in Georgia. So I graduated with a master's in music education and got the one job that was offered me in Paulding County, Georgia, which is where I live now. It's very pretty, but not a mecca of music education by any stretch. No offense to anybody listening from Paulding County. I love you all. And then I got the opportunity. I got a call that said, do you want to come open a new school? This guy is looking for somebody with drum corps experience, somebody young and energetic. Got the job, stayed there for 16 years, built this amazing program. I was the head director for 9 years after the assistant for 7. And then over time, I started teaching student leadership, really falling in love with student leadership. I had a relationship with this company, growing leaders in their curriculum. And during the pandemic, I started to think, like many of us, what's my next step? Do I want to keep doing this? And at the end of the day, growing leaders and they asked me, are you interested in a job being our curriculum director? And it was the right people, right place, right time. And I got to have a hand in handing the program over to my assistant at the time, Jeremy Lumpkin. He's now the head director, teaches my own children. And he's doing a great job. And so I'm happy that the thing that I helped build is in somebody's hands that are tending it well. And I'm off on new adventures.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Patrick, I just find you so impressive. I've been to your rehearsals many times, and just your artistic leadership is incredible. Is it possible just to kind of talk us through how you approach leadership in a music education setting? Because I have seen you do this firsthand, and it is truly brilliant.
Thank you. That's very kind coming from you, Doctor. So there's a couple of different ways to approach student leadership in a music education setting. And the first one is to realize that you can't do it without it. Like, we are at maximum, unless you teach in a place with 5 or 6 directors, and even then you probably got 600 students, right? We can't do it by ourselves. We need student leaders to help us. We need student leaders to help manage things, to help set the culture. But also, if we judged our success in music based on how many professional musicians and music teachers we sent out of the classroom, most of us would be complete failures, right? If you looked at the statistics, it was like, how many professional musicians and teachers have you sent out, Patrick? It ain't that many, not in the thousands of students that I've taught. And so we have to look at the other reasons why they're there. And the thing that we have to do for our kids is get them ready for real life. And the thing that gets kids ready for real life is leadership skills. It's how do we manage relationships? It's how do we manage our social awareness to other people? How do we make decisions when we put on our big boy pants outside of the classroom? How self-aware can I become? And then how do I manage my own life? And so the first way I would say we have to approach leadership education is we have to do it with intentionality. We have to look at our students and realize that they're there for a multitude of reasons. And what we can give them is way more than music. We can prepare them to work together on a team. We can prepare them for real life through music education, because that's the thing that brings us together. But it's not the reason why they're there. It's rarely the reason why they're there, I should say. And then the other flip side of that is, how are we going to do this? What tools do we have in our tool belt? I think a lot of band directors know that they need leadership and they want to give their students leadership. But outside of the occasional call to, Tim Lautzenheiser, Fran Kick, Scott Lang, or somebody that's like, come work with my kids, we're just not sure how to do it. Maybe we read a book together or watch a video. But when we do so with intentionality and we look at our kids and say, music is why we're here together. It's what brought us together. But what I'm going to give you is so much more than that. I think that's when we are really successful as music educators.
Dude, that's amazing. I love the idea of intentionality, but your why still remaining in music.
Yeah.
So you're tying that together in such a fantastic way. Can you hone in a little bit more specifically? What are the strategies that you would suggest in building a successful leadership program?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I came up with 3 kind of categories. And the first one is leadership skills. How do we give them leadership skills? I started out just kind of making it up as I went. And then Happened upon Tim Lausenheiser has a really great book out called Classic Leadership. We used that for a while. The students then were like, hey, can we do something else? I said, sure. So we started reading a book by John Maxwell called 360-Degree Leader. Really impacted me.
Right.
And then I had to translate it for them. The kids were like, I think this was written for adults. And I said, yeah, it was. I think this was written for business people. Yeah, it was. Let's translate it. And so I'd spent a lot of time translating these skills to my students. And then I met this gentleman by the name of Tim Elmore, Dr. Tim Elmore, who founded Growing Leaders, where I work now. And he used to work for John Maxwell. And he was on a podcast that I was listening to. And he said, you know what? I used to work for John Maxwell, and I really wanted kids to understand what he was saying. So I created my own curriculum and set of books. And my head just flew off. It was like, that's what I've been looking for the whole time. And so it's this curriculum called Habitudes is what I manage and work with teachers on now. It's habits and attitudes mashed together. And the way that I conveyed those skills to my students was through this curriculum. We would spend an entire day during the week in the fall doing leadership. Every class, once a week on a Wednesday, would say, leave your instruments in the case. We're doing leadership. Every kid got a leadership lesson from me or one of my assistants once a week for the whole fall.
Everyone in the band program.
Every single kid.
Every single kid.
Wow. And there were days where, because we taught on a block schedule, I had 80 something kids or 80 something minutes. We had 300 something kids. And so we would take maybe 45 minutes to do a leadership lesson. Go get your instruments out. Let's get going. In the second semester, because we had performance evaluations, et cetera, we said, we're only going to do it after school. And it was strange. The kids would say, why? But we want these lessons, right? And say, sorry, we got big stuff coming up. So we would do leadership lessons after school once a week, all spring. And I would have 100 kids show up just to volunteer to be there. And so giving them the skills intentionally with a method that helps. That was strategy number one. You got to find a tool, because the best, as many people that as you can bring in to work with your kids, you are the one they look up to the most. You're the one working with them every day. If you're sharing your story and your skills and your ideas with them, and they're sharing back with you, that's an amazing transformational experience. The second thing is inclusion. And I kind of already touched on this. Every kid deserves to be a leader. Every kid deserves to be led well. Every kid deserves to learn leadership skills. That's why we did it to everyone, David. After school in the second semester, it was for who will show up, right? And that's your drum majors. And some of them showed up because they had to, because they knew they couldn't be drum major or section leader unless they came. Others showed up just because they wanted to keep learning. But that fall semester when we did leadership lessons for everybody, it was because some of them can't come after school, or they won't. And so I wanted to make sure I included everyone in the process. And so every kid, the quiet kid on euphonium and the loud one on trombone and the drummer that can't find his sticks, everybody needs leadership skills, and I was going to give it to them. And then the last thing, so we covered skills and inclusion. The last one's ownership. We had to find ways to give kids ownership over their band program, their leadership skills, give them an opportunity to practice these things I was teaching them. Is a great laboratory to go out and try something and fail, and we'll sweep up the pieces. Go talk to the middle schoolers, give a presentation, set up chairs, clean up the bathrooms. Everything was within their reach. We just had to give them ownership and permission to practice the skills that we were giving them.
Just to kind of summarize for all of the listeners out there who are extremely busy trying to get everything organized for the beginning of the school year, are you able just to kind of summarize the most important things that you found are helpful, essential in fostering a successful leadership team?
Yeah. You have to put in the time. We have a principle at Growing Leaders called splashes, not waves. And we're really good at making a splash. And we see this in professional learning all the time in as teachers. Somebody comes in, they make this amazing speech and presentation, and everybody gets all excited, and we're like, yeah, best year ever. And then 2 weeks later, that person's no longer there, and we just go right back to the way things were, right? What was his name again? Oh, the great speech. Yeah, that was great. Right? What did we do about it? Nothing, right? We're splashing around, making a bunch of noise, and nothing changes. The way that we approached leadership education, and we're really talking about culture right? It's creating culture in your band program where students are valued, they're heard, and they have things that they can do, ownership over the thing. Students support what they help create. Was that we had to make waves. And waves are long and slow and difficult, but they're also really powerful. If you've ever been to the beach, and it doesn't matter, Patrick's out there splashing around, but a big wave is going to knock me over. So it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Like, splashes are good. Get somebody in here to kick it off. Bring me in, right? Let's have some fun. But at the end of the day, we, the educator, the director, we have to create waves. And it's waves through relationship with our students. It's waves through intentional time set aside to do this, either after school or even during rehearsal. It's an intentional practice by which I can share my story with them and they with me. And then what are we going to do about this, right? What action steps are we going to take? What ownership are we going to provide? And so I think if anybody out there is listening, they're like, what do I do? It's like, figure out how to make waves. Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Is it every 2 weeks? But it can never work if it's just one big splash. And I do a lot of these where we'll come in, do a leadership workshop, and then hope for the best, right? It's like, we warmed up at band camp. Why do we need to keep warming up in October? It doesn't, right? That metaphor makes a lot of sense, right?
It does.
Yeah. Or, it reminds me of, this is, if you'll indulge me, it reminds me of a joke. There was once a wife who'd been married to her husband for like 20 years. And she looked at him and he goes, "You never tell me that you love me." And he looked back and said, "I told you I loved you when we got married, and I'll let you know when it changes." So what we're talking about is continual practice, right? Yeah. We practice our instruments. We do daily drills all the time. If we want leadership to work, we have to have it ingrained in our daily processes and procedures, or at least weekly or on a regular basis. Wow. Soapbox off.
Yeah, man, that is fantastic stuff. I'm learning a lot. And I tell you, just a little anecdote for myself. Last year I read every John Maxwell book published. I think it was at the beginning of the year. It's like, I'm going to read all these books, and man, they're applicable in so many ways, not just business. I mean, they're geared toward business leadership, but man, I was looking like, this is a life lesson. Almost every book was just full of life lessons. So I think it's incredible that your company, your organization is using and connecting those dots with student leadership.
Yeah. And we didn't cover this, and it's public knowledge, but we don't really just shout it from the rooftops. I actually work for Maxwell Leadership, like John Maxwell, his company, and Growing Leaders merged. And so I've got John Maxwell in one ear and Tim Elmore in the other. And it's, man, we got leadership coming out every place. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. Well, let's shift it back to music ed. So what trends or changes do you see in music education that include student leadership, and how do you think it's going to impact us here in the future?
Yeah. This is tough because education is changing now faster than I think any of us have ever seen it from a language standpoint. I've been at Growing Leaders for 2 years, and we've gone through leadership, through social and emotional learning, into soft skills and life skills, around the character bend, and back to resilience. And now we're back to leadership. It's like everything that we call these initiatives or educational ideas it still comes back to leadership. Some of them have been over politicized and taken out of context, et cetera. But at the end of the day, it's sifting through some of the changing environments, but sticking to what works. So what we need is to take timeless principles and bring them to kids in a timely manner. It's sticking to your guns, right? So we want to play all this new music, but all this new music we still have to have the same old skills to do it. And so when we start looking at the educational landscape that's out there, saying, are we doing life skills? Are we doing SEL? Are we doing character? We're doing leadership. We're giving kids life skills, soft skills, whatever you want to call them, it's timeless principles, and how do we get them to them in a timely manner? We have to also kind of redefine our job description. As much as I would love to just be a music teacher, as much as I would love to just be a band director, that's not it. It was my job to bring them life skills. It was my job to bring them leadership lessons and to listen to them and to be their therapist and their coach and all of those things. It just kind of comes with the territory if we want to be great.
Right.
And so when you look at your job description, teach music, but teach all these other things too, because they're going to be better for it. And at the end of the day, our jobs, as much as anybody's jobs, are dependent on students showing up. Like, if my band is full of empty chairs, I'm going to have to go find another job. And so when we're giving them the things that they need, when we're setting them up for success in real life, when we're setting them up to be leaders and entrepreneurs and influencers, whatever that looks like, they'll stick around. They'll stay for 4 years in high school. They'll stay for however many years in college or 3 years in middle school. And so, yes, teach music, but give them reasons to continue to show up with what you're giving them on a regular basis. And then one more thing, I think we have to look at the difference between empathy and accountability. I think we have really gone hard into empathy since the pandemic. Like your feelings matter. I love you. I love you just the way you are. Don't ever change. There's nothing wrong with that language. Let me be clear. But while I love you just the way you are, I love you too much to leave you as you are. Right. And so I'm going to give you empathy. I want to know your feelings. I want you to know that you're valued, but I'm also here to help you grow. And that's going to be tough sometimes. So you're going to get tough feedback from me. You're going to get tough love from me, but it's kind of that old adage. Don't get upset when your coach yells at you, get upset when your coach ignores you. Right. It's like, I have to love my students and have empathy for my students. But at the same time, I have to love my students enough to hold them accountable, to hold their feet to the fire, to force them to grow when they don't want to sometimes. Right. And that's kind of what leadership is. It's remembering that there are people in my life that help me grow. And sometimes I don't want to hear it, but it's as long as it's for my best benefit and with the best of intentions, we have to look out at our students and balance empathy and accountability in a world that kind of just wants empathy right now.
Yeah, no, I understand completely.
This hearing all of this, I could imagine that a listener is probably going, this feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose. Right?
Oh, sure.
So just everybody understands this takes a while to scaffold in order to be able to kind of get through this in a successful way. And also it's okay to try and fail and learn and grow. I mean, and all for the betterment of our students, right? I mean, this is how the process works, but you have to have a plan and you have to start somewhere, right? So
that's brilliant.
Patrick, to that point, I have two questions for you. One, for directors who are initiating a student leadership program, how do they do that? And then second question, other side of that coin, if they already have a strong program in terms of student leadership, how do they better foster that?
Oh, that's good. So advice to get started is first of all, it starts with you. One thing I had to get in touch with was that I have to be the leader that my students need me to be. I can't just teach them leadership skills and not be a good leader myself. And so the first thing, kind of what David said, was like, I'm going to read a bunch of books and learn about leadership and then put this into practice. It's exactly what we have to do as the leader of these sometimes massive organizations, where we're leading booster clubs and parents and kids and staff all at the same time. I have to work on myself first. So that's step number one is if you want to teach your kids to be better leaders, be a better leader. Model that to them. Figure out what that looks like. Read, listen, learn, find a mentor, etc. Once you're ready to do that, it's being comfortable with setting aside whatever time is necessary to grow your students as leaders. John, you said you had to have a plan. And so I was confident enough in my skills as an educator to only play 4 days a week in the fall with my students so that we could do leadership lessons once a week. Now, that was during marching band season. So they were playing, most of my students were playing multiple times a day anyway. So it kind of all balanced itself out. And it was a nice break from the monotony of the September, October, November slog. So it's setting aside time, having confidence in your ability both to grow your kids as leaders and to be an educator that can plan around those sessions. And if you choose to do it after school, then still you got to have a plan. And then you got to find a tool. Like, don't write your own thing. There's 1,000 things out there, right? Nobody's writing their own method book. You're going to go get the directed listening model and you're going to read it and you're going to rock the world with it. So don't reinvent the wheel.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Go and find a tool, right? One of the thing that changed Hillgrove High School where I taught was habitudes, and that it changed us so much and we got so good at it that the company that wrote it came to me and said, snatch, we're going to pull you right out of the classroom and have you do this for everybody. So I spend all of my time in curriculum now, training teachers, training students, training adults to connect with kids. So it's find a tool that works. So you don't have to spend a lot of time on these things. We develop lessons that are plug and play. Flip it on, you turn on the projector, and ready, set, go. It's all set for you. And then it's just about conversation. It was about me talking to my students talking to each other, putting things into practice. Once you have a tool and you have a process, et cetera, the last thing is you have to trust your students and you have to give them ownership to lead. If they come to you with an idea, if they come to you with an initiative, be willing to say, do you need my help or you need my permission? And if they just need your permission, just say yes. Let them go. I had a student named Brenna Sexton, amazing oboe player. John, you would have met Brenna the last time you were at Hillgrove. Red curly hair. She's at UGA now playing the oboe. There you go. She came to me one day and wanted to start a United Sound chapter. And if you don't know what United Sound is, it's a special needs mentoring group where band students mentor students with special needs, teach them how to play the instrument, bring them into the culture, et cetera. And I was like, Brenna, I don't have a lot of margin right now. And she literally looks at me and she goes, I don't need your help. I just need you to say yes. Like, okay. So Brenna comes in with a team of people, a plan, a rehearsal schedule. All she needed from me was to be there on Fridays for an hour to supervise. So there was an adult in the room and I took pictures. That's all I did. And they did all the work. And so it was really for me being willing to let go, because I would have said no. It's like, we got too many things going on. But it was trusting her, looking at her plan and saying, yes, ready, set, go. Let me know what you need. And all she needed from me was to sit in a chair and be the adult in the room while they worked literal magic with these kids, to the point that she's calling their parents to make sure that they have a dismissal plan, walking them out to the car. She did things I could have, would have never done. And it's trust and ownership and the dividends that pays in terms of community support, in terms of just gratitude for the things that we have, and for other students, because the reputation of the program is what gets kids to stay and to show up in the first place. When you've got a reputation where students are doing work and telling everybody how much they love it, all I had to do was get out of the way. So trust your kids, trust that they have the skills and the best interest in heart, and give them ownership over everything you possibly can. It was better for me and it was great for her. So there's a whole litany of advice.
That is incredible. This is incredible information, Patrick.
Thank you.
Really fantastic information. And I was reminded when John was talking, it probably does seem overwhelming if you're starting from scratch, or, even when you have the entire band culture going around you and you have a strong leadership team, but you still need to be doing that on a daily basis personally.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming. I was reminded of a John Maxwell quote, just kind of going through my head: fail early, fail often, fail forward. And the idea that it's not going to be perfect every time, but if you're getting up every time and doing it again and failing forward, eventually you have growth.
Yeah.
Which is something it's really stuck with me. But such great information. We have to wrap it up. We're running out of time. We have one final question for you. It's probably the most important question of the day, which is, what is your favorite time signature?
Oh. Well, it's not 5-4. I will say that out loud. Having conducted Mars more times than I can count, and I still can't count to 5.
That's a hard one too. Just to get there's middles.
Golly, what are we doing here? Favorite times. I love 6/8. I just love it. I love conducting 6/8. It's a dance. You can just move about the podium, and if you get lost, you can just make circles. There's so much you can do with 6/8.
The circles, I love it.
I absolutely love it. So there you go.
Man, I'm sorry, but the correct answer was common time. But we won't hold it against you. Brother.
Curses.
It's so great having you on. Thank you, Patrick, for your time today. We appreciate you so much. John?
My pleasure.
Man, it's always good to see you. I am so impressed with you. And for our listeners out there, go and check out Patrick's work. He is genius at this. Not only his ensembles were incredible, truly incredible, but his leadership process and instruction, and how he cares about students and inspires them and empowers them to be excellent citizens in the world is just truly impressive. Patrick, thank you for all that you do for kids and music education. It's inspiring, man. I am really inspired by you.
Awesome. I appreciate you both just for having me, and you've both been a pretty significant influence on my life since I was 21 when we met at Cavies, and let's keep the train rolling, guys.
Yeah, my friend. Great. Thank you again. It's wonderful having you on, and that's a wrap. Okay, everyone, that's a wrap for this episode of Common Time Podcast. We hope you gained some valuable insights and inspiration to take back to your ensemble. New episodes of Common Time Podcast drop every Monday. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more music educators just like you. And a special thanks to our wives, Jessica and Theresa, for keeping us organized enough to make this happen. Also, don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Common Time Podcasts for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Keep making music and keep making a difference.